Alright, what's going on, guys? It's your boy Sohnee, back again for another video. Now in this video, we're going to be unboxing a 3DS from Japan. Now last year I made a video where I unboxed the Vita that I got from GameStop, and that video did very well and you guys really enjoyed that one, so I wanted to do something similar to this, but with another system that I didn't have. Now I decided to go with the 3DS right here, and as you can see, this is not a regular 3DS, it's a Japanese one. You can tell because I'm pretty sure the box that we got here in America is a little bit different. Now this is the new 3DS model, so that means it'll have the C-Stick, it'll have amiibo functionality, and of course this edition, the regular new Nintendo 3DS, has removable faceplates, so you can actually swap them out, which like they try to advertise here. They show you some of the ones that you can customize with, and yeah, that's pretty much look at the box. It's pretty colorful actually, which I was very surprised by, and also I was very surprised to even get the original box in the first place, so that's kind of cool to have. But yeah, let's get into this because it was kind of a struggle to get this, and I'm going to explain to you guys exactly what happened. So why did I get a Japanese 3DS? Well, originally I didn't actually want to, but I ended up stumbling on a pretty decent deal. The listing said that the 3DS was in very good condition, and it was for $120, which I thought was a decent price because I can use that to compare it to the Vita, which was also around $120. So I thought this was a good deal. I decided to pick it up, and honestly, I looked into it. You know, I did a little bit of research and made sure that the seller was a legit seller, because I actually have gotten scammed in the past, both as a seller and a buyer. So I try to make sure that I was buying from a legitimate seller, and after confirming that indeed this was a legitimate seller, I put in my order and I waited. One thing to mention though is that the seller didn't actually send me a tracking number, and that was a little concerning and a little suspicious. So I contacted the seller and said, hey, you know, can I get a tracking number? And they responded pretty quickly and they said, yeah, no worries, we'll send you a tracking number. And then they never sent one. And then I contacted them again a few days later and they still didn't send one. So that was really annoying and a little bit scary because I thought I was getting scammed. Thankfully though, FedEx actually sent me a tracking number themselves because I happen to have an account with them. So when they saw that the package had my address on it, they basically were able to notify me that a package was coming, and that's how I was able to track it. But that is one of the things that I was not very happy about with the seller, is that they didn't provide me with the tracking number, even though they said they were going to update it and they were going to send it to me as soon as possible. But yeah, the 3DS did eventually arrive and I was able to track it, but not through the actual seller. So just keep that in mind. Some sellers may not be as helpful to you when it comes to buying things imported from Japan. However, once it did arrive, one of the cool things was that it came in its original box, which is something that I was not expecting, and they actually included a charger, which was really interesting because on the listing they did not mention that they were going to include a charger. I was fully going to buy my own, but they actually included one, and it is an original Nintendo charger. It wasn't a third-party one, it was an official Nintendo charger. So that was cool, because if you guys know, the 3DSs that didn't actually come with chargers. I think only the 2DS models came with one, but if you were to buy one of these, for example, you weren't going to get one. Now, I also went with the new 3DS model because I didn't want the older models. I wanted something that was a little bit more recent. I wanted something that had the C-Stick, you know, with all the new functionalities and stuff like that. So I decided to go with this one because I didn't want something that was like the XL, for example. I think that's a little too big for me, so I thought this was also perfect. And another reason was because of the faceplates. I was worried that I was going to get scratch faceplates, so having replaceable faceplates is important because I can just buy new ones and then it'll look like new. So anyways, let's open it up so I can show you guys exactly what came in the box. So here it is. It actually came with a bunch of manuals, which was surprising because these are the original manuals that came with the 3DS, and they're all in Japanese, so I can't read any of them. Not like we were going to need them anyway, but that was really cool that they actually included them. And it also came with a sealed copy of the AR cards, which again, I was not expecting them to include. I don't think people really use the AR cards. I think you can actually buy these separately, so I'm not really too sure whether these were actually the ones that came with the 3DS I bought or not, but that was really cool. At least they included that. They included the original box, and of course, the only other thing that would come in here would be the 3DS, but as you can see, there's no 3DS in here. don't worry, I've taken it out and I've already charged it. I've put custom firmware on it. I came prepared this time because unlike the Vita video where I showed you the startup and I showed you how to set it up, with the 3DS, I wanted to be a little bit more prepared and have that all ready for you so I can show you exactly what the experience would be like after you actually set it up and everything. Now, one thing to mention is, of course, because it's a Japanese 3DS, all the menus are going to be in Japanese. So that was a little tricky to get through. I used an app on my phone to translate the stuff on the screen so I can set everything up and get everything ready. And even after you put custom firmware, it still leaves the menus and all the settings in Japanese. So you're still going to have to deal with that. And that's something to note if you're going to get a Japanese 3DS. All right, another thing I should mention, of course, is that 3DSs are region locked. So a Japanese 3DS will only play Japanese 3DS games. So that's something to keep in mind, is that if you decide to import one, you're going to have to get Japanese games unless you add custom firmware on it. So you basically have to mod your 3DS. There's no other way to really enjoy it because otherwise you're not going to be able to play any games because you're going to have to import them. But once you put custom firmware on it, it basically breaks the region locking and gives you the ability to play any games from any region. So that's the cool thing. So just keep that in mind because a lot of people don't realize that when they buy a 3DS from Japan. So here it is. Here is the 3DS, and as you can see, it does work. It charges, it turns on, it does everything it's supposed to. But let me show you exactly the condition that I got it in, because that is probably the most controversial part of this entire video. Now, it's going to be hard to show you on camera, so I'm going to switch cameras and show you exactly what it looked like. So as you can see here, the face plates are scratched up really, really badly. This is not a very good condition 3DS, which is what the listing said. This is like good condition at the most. And that was the most disappointing part about this because, you know, I was assuming that I was going to get a really good condition one, but this is terrible. Whoever owned this before me scratched it up pretty badly, which, I mean, the bottom plate being scratched up makes sense, you know, because you take it everywhere, you put it on hard surfaces all the time, and it can scratch your 3DS. I understand that, but it's absolutely disappointing to see that. And I also have some scratches here on the edges. So I have a theory that this may actually have been dropped at some point. And one thing that tells me that is that the back plate here on the right side, you can actually press into it and it doesn't stay still. It's kind of loose, and that's a little bit of a problem because, like, as you're playing it, you can really feel it and it gets annoying sometimes. Not the biggest deal, but it's something to note and something that was a little disappointing. So yeah, the outside is completely terrible. The one thing that I can do is potentially I could get new plates and replace them, and it'll make it look a lot better. So I might actually end up doing that, but I just wanted to make sure to show you guys exactly the condition that I got it in before I did any upgrades and stuff like that to it. But as you can see, there are no problems with the insides. There are no scratches, there are no marks, there are no cracks. The screens were in absolutely excellent condition, which is really what matters, even though the outside is all messed up. As long as the screens are perfectly fine, that's what matters, to be honest, because you're not really going to be seeing the outside anyway. You're going to be looking at the screens. So the screens were the most important thing, and thankfully they were in absolutely amazing condition. The face buttons all feel great, the triggers all work fine, the D-pad is a little kind of loose, but it works fine, nothing to complain about there, and the C-stick is working without a problem. The only thing that I should mention though is that the C-stick is a little bit ripped. I don't know what happened there, but it's a little bit ripped there. But yeah, everything else works fine. I tested the cameras, the microphone, the amiibo functionality. I've tested everything else on this to see if it works, and it does. The only thing I should mention is that the hinge is a little loose. I'm going to show you guys right here. It is a little loose, which happens. It's actually kind of common with 3DSs, of course. The more you use it, you know, you're opening it up, closing it. You know, when you do that multiple times, of course, this is going to get loose. So it's not that big of a problem, but it is something I should mention because it can get a little bit annoying. So keep that in mind when you're buying 3DSs used, is that you're going to probably get loose hinges. Now, it could be problematic because in the future, your actual ribbon cable might get damaged. But unless you are willing to go in and actually fix it yourselves by breaking apart your 3DS, then I wouldn't really worry about it too much. But yeah, that's just something I should mention there. one last thing is that the 3D functionality, it works, but maybe it's just me. I just don't like it very much. It makes me kind of dizzy, and at times it even flickers a little bit, and that's really annoying. I'm not sure if the original 3DS had that flickering effect, but mine does, and I'm not really too sure if that's what's supposed to happen or not. But yeah, that's really annoying. Now with this Model 3DS, they had like a new thing where like the camera would actually track your eyes, whereas the original 3DS didn't have that. So they try to make it a little bit better here, and maybe that's why it flickers. I don't know. I have no idea how to explain it except that it flickers and it's a little annoying. So most of the time I have the 3D turned off. I've never played a game with the 3D turned on. It just really bothers me. But other than that, there really isn't much more to talk about. The 3DS works as it should. It works perfectly. All the games work great, and I've had a ton of fun playing it, in the past few days. One thing that I should mention, of course, is that if you really want to get the most out of your 3DS, no matter whether it's a Japanese one or even an American one, you're gonna want to put custom firmware on it, because of course Nintendo doesn't really support it anymore, and they're no longer manufacturing the 3DSs. So you're gonna want to have custom firmware on it, because it just gives you the ability to add things like, for example, custom themes. Like the theme that I have right here, this is a really cool Gyarados theme. This was something that I wouldn't have been able to do, especially because the eShop, by the way, everything that you can do is in Japanese, and navigating to that would be impossible. And plus, like, I would have to spend real money to do so. But this way, with custom firmware, I can get custom themes online that people have made, random ones that they've made, or even some of the official ones that came out with the 3DS. So, that's something to keep in mind, is that you don't really have to worry about all of those customization options once you actually put custom firmware on it. Of course, another thing to mention is just the library. I was, one of the reasons why I was really excited to get a 3DS was just to try out a lot of the games that I haven't been able to try. For example, things like Mario Kart 7. I totally skipped on that one. Things like the Professor Layton games. I'm a big fan of those on the DS, and now I get to play the ones that I missed on the 3DS. Of course, we got all the Pokemon games. If you're a big Pokemon fan, there's 4 different Pokemon games that you could try here. You got 3 different Zelda games. You got Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Link Between Worlds. You have the Mario games. So you're going to have New Super Mario Brothers 2 and even Super Mario 3D Land. So that's, again, something to keep in mind. It's just like there's so much here for you to try out. And also, of course, the 3DS plays DS games. So once you add custom firmware on it, of course, you're going to be able to put a bunch of DS ROMs on this, and you're going to be able to play a bunch of DS games. And the DS library is also really great. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And on top of that, you can actually emulate Game Boy Advance. You can emulate Nintendo 64. You can emulate a ton of stuff here on the 3DS. So, you can expand your experience past what Nintendo actually originally offered. Do I recommend that you get a Japanese 3DS? Well, it really depends. If you can find a really good deal, then I would say yes. Otherwise, I would say that you should probably buy locally. Try to find someone on Facebook Marketplace. Try to find someone in your area that is selling a 3DS, because that's honestly going to be your best option. Most of the time, it's going to be parents that are just trying to get rid of their children's 3DS for a very cheap price because they don't want it in their house anymore, and they're trying to get a little bit of cash for it. So that's probably the best thing that you could do. That's the best way to go about it. And also, of course, by that method, you're going to be able to actually see the quality of the 3DS firsthand before you even buy it. So that's something to keep in mind. There's also a bunch of special edition 3DSs that Japan got. Now, of course, I got the regular black one, but you could definitely find the special edition 3DSs that only Japan got and are exclusive to them. And those are actually pretty cool. So if you're looking for that specifically, definitely go with the Japanese ones. I love making these kinds of videos, and you guys love the last one, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. Leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more content, because we got a bunch of more stuff coming through. We got a bunch more PS5 content coming through. We got a ton more guides getting ready and set up for release, so keep an eye out for that. Subscribe so you guys can see that when it comes out, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you all for watching, and peace out.